your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I am Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D. Thank you so much for joining us. And our returning guest, she was one of our very first guests in the first year we started this program back in 2007. But she's been with us even after that in 2024, I believe. And it's great to have Dr. Debra Mandel back with us here on the program, author of several books, but one in particular, Sassy and Rude Her NewAttitude. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you again. Yeah, it's been a long history.
Indeed. As a matter of fact, I do believe I was interviewing you even before I started Tell Me Your Story when I was living back in Phoenix. I think I had you on a few times, and we've talked about all of the work that you're doing, and it's quite exciting, especially when you start thinking about how things have changed over the years, just in general. But I mean, that's par for the course. Mm-hmm. I've actually come up with a new phrase to describe it, because you know how people cringe when you talk about change. Oh, don't tell me about change. A book that I read that was mandatory at one of the first stations I worked at was Who Moved the Cheese?
Oh, I remember that one. Yes.
And I read it, and I go into my boss's office and I put the book on his desk and I say, look, I read the book. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Here's the deal. I don't have a problem with people moving the cheese. That's not my issue. My issue is that I'm not told where they moved it. Tell me where you moved it, that kind of thing. But I come up with a new phrase for change. And it dives into, of course, what we do here on the program, dealing with new paradigms and more esoteric, if you will, metaphysical, spiritual constructs. Divine flow. All right. We already know that is one constant in the universe. There are people who've listed others, but change is just that, because everything is in motion, right?
Absolutely.
And we have a hard time with that. I think about, again, a lot of different analogies. I think primarily of, for example, a river. And it goes where it wants to go. They can actually rechannel it, but eventually it'll go back to the channel that it had carved out on its own. But if you get into the water, let's say I cannot float on my back. I don't know about you, but in the water, I can float face down just fine. Mm-hmm. My sister used to be able to float on her back. It was great. She tried to teach me, but I guess I don't have the relaxation part worked out. But you get in that water, in the lake, or in the river, and it will just carry you. And you'll move maybe to the left, close to that bank, and then to the center and to the right. But you keep flowing down. But we want to go upstream a lot of times, like the salmon, and so on and so forth. And it's like that resistance that causes us the challenges, as we like to put them.
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit about that because it does tie into, especially this book about, sassy and rude, because there's a certain level of resistance within that kind of relationship, and obviously the book itself is dealing primarily with mother-daughter types of relationships, but just life in general. Can we start maybe talking? And it is a real big subject. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. Talk to us about how you handle this concept we call change or divine flow.
Absolutely. And as you were talking about the river, it came to my mind to make this even more relatable internally for people. Just think about our breath and how frequently the rate at which we breathe changes. Think about our heart rate and how much our heart rate fluctuates in a day. Our blood pressure fluctuates. So, just even within our own bodies, we have this divine flow of ever changing moment to moment within us. How often we blink, if we blink more, if we blink less. There's a mouthful. And how much lubrication we have in our eyes. There's just so much that goes on. So maybe we're a little overwhelmed because we are dealing with so much change just within our own bodies sometimes, that when we have to deal with change on the outside, it becomes very frustrating for some people. We want something that we can control, and there's so much outside of us that we cannot control. But we work so hard at trying to do that. So that's one of the premises in all of my work, all my writings, all my practice with my clients, is to try to understand where we have control and where we don't. Like the serenity prayer, it says and have the wisdom to know the difference. And when we stop fighting that and we just move into acceptance, we have such a better chance of having quality relationships, and relationships that really work in a way that are nourishing, nurturing, supportive, understanding. Now, again, we can't always change another person. In fact, we have some influence usually if we're close to somebody. Our behavior does affect one another. If we have a spouse or a significant other or a child or a grandparent, we're very close to these people, or best friends. So the things we say and do are going to have an impact. So we have to be mindful of that. But we're not controlling another person. And when we're trying to do that, then we are really interrupting the divine flow, as you name it.
Hmm. In many different areas, institutionally, there are individuals who are trying to get their message out there to convince people to choose to go a particular way. And I find that fascinating. Now, for myself, I would focus primarily on, let's say, the religious realm, the religious institutions. They've been doing that for centuries, long. I mean, we're talking literally, maybe thousands of years. It's been going on. There's always been this sort of attempt to manipulate.
Mhm.
But when it comes down to it, their manipulation is only going to work if we choose, and it's still our choice, all right,
Mhm.
to follow them or not follow them. I used to think, especially from the philosophical and or spiritual perspective, that I'm missing out on something because I'm not following anybody. I mean, my metaphysical primer is Autobiography of a Yogi, but I also have a book I carry with me everywhere, and that is The Impersonal Life by James Banner, written back in the 30s.
Mhm.
And there are lots of other people that I have read, and I could list them, and including yourself. And I like a lot of what they say, but it doesn't compel me to want to follow. And I don't even do that online in social media. It's like I love these little shorts where they'll show this video of someone who has accomplished something really cool, and it's only like a 15-20 second video, and they haven't even gotten 2 likes. And I'm going, so what you're telling me, the implication is they did what they did in order to get likes, instead of they did what they did because that's who they are. And again, then these are kindness kinds of things. Um, Motivation, see, or intent. Maybe a better word is intent. What about because my book, for example, Choices: 5 Steps for Life, talks about the fact that it's all about choices. This life is just that. It's all about choices. Whether it's you're in the divine flow or not, you either choose to be in the flow or you choose not to. And I'm not saying for anybody that they have to
Mhm.
any more than you're saying the same thing. What about the concept, if you will, or trying to impart to people, first of all, that saying that you are where you are because of the choices you've made up to this point, and you'll be wherever you're going to be in 5 years because of the choices you make now. I mean, you and I go back this far. As kids, we made choices, strangely enough, that have brought us right here, right now.
That's
Talk to
true.
us.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle us back for a moment about manipulation because many people believe that manipulation is a bad word, that if someone says you're manipulating me, that you're
Okay.
evil or bad. And the truth is, for every quality, there's a flip side, there's a positive and a negative. We can use manipulation in a very toxic and harmful way, or
Mm-hmm.
we can just accept that human beings are manipulative. We have to be for our survival. So we are attempting to maneuver, to influence, uh, to get somebody to see our point of view. Every time we're having a conversation, if I'm saying something that I want you to understand and hear, I am manipulating my words to try to see how you are going to receive my message. That's not bad. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
communicate. That's how we survive.
Okay.
Children are notoriously manipulative because they have to be. They have to be super cute or super endearing or do say things that really aren't true sometimes just because they want mommy and daddy or mommy and mommy or daddy and daddy to love them and to not chuck them out the window when they're driving and they don't like the way their kid is behaving. Right? I
Uh,
mean, truly. So we want to kind of neutralize that word and understand. And I talk about that a great deal in Sassy and Rude about understanding on the continuum of manipulation as to how it's very negative, as to where it can become understandably positive. So lying and deceit types of manipulation, harmful.
mm,
But using our best goodwill to try to get somebody to understand a point of view that we may believe would bring some positive change is okay, especially if we have a willing listener. So that's that piece. And then when it comes to choices, choices are also such fascinating because if somebody has a victim mentality, if you will, let's say somebody was abused as a child and they truly were put in situations where their choices were extraordinarily limited, then they often grow up expecting that the world is going to fix that for them. And they see themselves as continuing to live in a space or a world or a relationship where they don't have the full range of being able to choose or have options. And the other piece is that people think that choices are always supposed to be good. Sometimes all options stink.
yeah.
Sometimes we're put in situations, maybe because of our own poorer choices, but we might be in a situation where, uh-oh, I only have two ways out this time. One way in, one way out. That's it. So those are your choices, but still choices nonetheless.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and so just to complete that thought, there then is that full circle of choice, right? Because every choice we make influences another choice. So they're not independent, as you were saying, right? When you're making choices, even as a child, if you choose to go across the street on a red light and there are cars coming and that's the choice you made and you get hit by a car and you lose a limb, that was a choice. That's going to affect every other choice that happens in the rest of your life.
I love one of my guests threw in this addendum to that two lines there, the choices we've made and the choices we will make. And he said, that's true. However, the choices that you make from this point forward are based upon your perception of what you think the future is going to be.
Hmm.
Now, the examples that I use are preppers. They dig a hole in the ground, line it with concrete, fill it with supplies, provisions, and so forth to hopefully survive the apocalypse, if and or when it ever happens. And that's fine. I'm not being critical. That's if that's how you feel and that's what you think is coming, then you're going to make choices that are based upon that. Where I'm an optimistic guy, if it comes, it comes. Just let me be at ground zero, so I'm vaporized immediately, and I'm out of here. I do not want to be a survivor, that kind of thing. Um, but that's one of those aspects that I know a lot of people don't really think too much about. It's like, well, where's my mindset? What's my intention about this particular choice or that? But I want to throw into the mix as we continue here with Dr. Debra Mandel, who has a book also entitled, I love this one. This is very cool. Don't Call Me a Drama Queen. The name currently today here in the 21st century, 2025, is a Karen. And the male version, I believe, is referred to as a Ken. And I've
Hmm.
seen a lot of videos of Kens and Karens, and it's like, you people, you really need some therapy, in my opinion. Because we don't behave that way here in the 21st century. You got to calm down. Just calm down. It's going to be okay. All right. We'll be talking with Dr. Debra Mandel as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D, and we are talking with a good friend of mine who has been on the program many times here in the last, oh my goodness, what has it been then? 18 years now? Uh,
Yes.
Unbelievable. And maybe even before. And you know what? I take pride in telling people, oh yeah, my best friend and I, we knew each other for 53 years before he passed away. Or I have this friend 20 years. Or, I mean, in my first marriage, my one of my goals was to live and be married to the same person for as long as my parents. Of course, they were 20 years ahead of me, but that's fine, and it didn't happen. I'm in another relationship now, and it's been great for the last 28 years that we've been together. So life moves forward. Wanted to ask you in regards to all of these different aspects of change and the divine flow. Can we talk a little bit about our intuition, that still small voice we promote here on the program? People spending time during this, as I called it, the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within and listen to that still small voice. How important is that? How do we utilize that in especially being in the divine flow and making those choices?
Intuition is so critical and it's such an important part of us in our human nature. It's also incredibly important in the animal kingdom, but we pay less attention to that. We know that to be so, but then we forget about it as also being part of who we are as
Hmm.
humans. What happens though is that we often are swayed away from our intuition. We are told not to trust our intuition. In fact, many people who don't trust their intuition are the very people who are raising us, so they do not want intuition in the mix at all. So we don't really understand it or know how to find it. So then as adults, we're walking around, we feel these gut feelings, and then a lot of times we just turn them into anxiety. We turn them into projections about catastrophic things to come, and we just actually stop listening to the little voice that does tell us sometimes, hey, you know what, maybe that's not the best idea right now. I'll never forget a moment of intuition that I had many, 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 many years ago. I too was taught definitely not to trust that, but there was an Aeromexico flight that was leaving that I was scheduled to be on, and I walked up to the gate and I said, I'm not getting on this plane. And people around me were like, why? I don't have no idea, but I am not getting on this plane. And lo and behold, that plane crashed and everybody died. I think everybody died. A lot of people died.
Yeah.
But it was one of those that it was so strong that I said, you know what, I'm listening to this one. There was another time I was going to go to Mammoth to go skiing. And I just felt this sense that it just didn't feel right. And so I was like, okay, I know I'm wrong much of the time, but it was so strong that I couldn't deny it. They had big avalanches and they had an earthquake.
Mm.
So a couple of times in my life, I think, oh, I really want to develop this more because it's very strong and very powerful. And I know a lot of people have that. But instead of feeling it as intuition, it comes across as anxiety. And that makes people really nervous. So it's hard to know the difference. But it's
Mm.
it's a good concept for all of us to explore and to build back into our lives because there's many times when we look back at our choices and we say, "Oh, if only I had trusted my intuition at that moment. If only I had listened to that voice." And maybe it would cause you sometimes to not do as many things. And I don't encourage people to become small or hide in their apartments or their houses because they believe that, everything's bad's going to happen constantly, as you call it, the apocalypse. So it's a challenge to navigate those internal forces and understand, when they're right on and when they are just a bunch of noise from our history that's telling us, uh-oh, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid.
Yeah, it's interesting too how, especially here in this country, we have our regular elections, local and state and national, and name calling is it's apparently it's next to baseball that seems to be America's pastime, name calling, and they will accuse certain candidates of being this evil person. I'm not even going to give it a name per se, other than that. And 4 years or 2 years or 6 years go by, and the earth didn't blow up. The system wasn't broken in that respect. And this person decided, that's all that's all I want. It was fun. I did my part. I served the public at whatever level it was, and I'm moving on. And the earth continues to spin. The sun rises and sets, and so on and so forth. I've been on this planet for 65 years, and I've heard this over and over again, this name calling, and I often think about this, and I think about this especially in terms of the work that you do. And I've often talked with some folks who say, they'll do this, and I'll say, well, wait a minute, why are you doing it? Can you not say anything positive about this person? And again, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, just in general.
Yeah.
Well, they're always name calling and da 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 da. I said, yeah, but it's got to stop with someone. Why not you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, because, and the same thing. For example, the arguments over climate change in China or India aren't doing their part. It's like, so you're basing, for example, your cleaning of your home on a Saturday, which is what when I was a kid growing up, that's what we did on Saturdays. We each of us kids, 6 kids, were given tasks. But my parents didn't base it on whether our neighbors cleaned their homes. We based it on the fact that the home needed to be clean. So I say the same thing, let's say at that level of climate change, or, the fact that we just need to clean up our home and not worry about whether anybody else is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really comes down, especially when it comes to personal growth. Everybody is this way and so forth, so I'm going to be this way. How do you, and I know too that people come to you because they want to make a difference. They want to make a change in self. They're about self awareness, self discovery, self knowledge to get through, so they can move on and live a productive life, find their life's purpose, enjoy the life that they've been given. But do you run into people who say, "No, I'm not going to do that because everybody else is already this way, so it doesn't make any difference. It's already hell in a handbasket, et cetera, et cetera." How do you break through some of that old programming?
Oh, lots of good concepts to jump on here. So let's go with name calling for a moment,
Hmm.
because it's interesting that you say that. One of the top 10 off limits behaviors when I'm doing couples therapy or family therapy is the no name calling. No, it's not okay. It's not acceptable, particularly in that setting. But one of the things to understand about why do people name call, it's a little bit of a form of prejudice, really. It's you're different than I am. I don't know how to deal with that. You make me anxious. I need to say something very quick that puts my mind at ease so I can put you in a category and then understand you better. Then I can regulate my behavior around that because I understand what that is. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
say somebody is a blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, if I understand what that blah, blah, blah is, then I can now regulate myself and adapt to that, and I feel safer.
Hmm.
It's tedious for people to say something like, well, how I perceive your behavior is such that this way, and I
Hmm.
interpret it to mean this, and this is how I feel about it. So when you do this action, I don't like it. Now, that's a way we try to learn how to speak to our loved ones so that we are not name calling and not putting them in boxes.
Hmm.
But you look at politicians or people are out there in the media and they want to have dramatic impact right away. And what's the way to get that everybody riled up? Do some name calling.
Yeah.
Makes people all riled up. And then what happens in the brain is it hits that primitive eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We also call it tit for tat. You
Hmm.
did that to me. You pulled my hair. I'm going to cut yours off.
Hmm.
You spit on me. I'm going to take gallons of water and drown you. Right? So it just becomes this vengeful, I need to get back, I need to reassert myself in my power position. So I
Hmm.
agree, boy, the more we can look at how do we interrupt that? How do we intercede, not do that anymore, intervene in a way that we can make changes in that dynamic. And that does start with us. So we go full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning. What do we have control over and what do we not? Somebody calls you a name, you say, ouch, I don't like that. I prefer if you named my behavior as what it is I'm doing that you don't like. But unless I do that repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly, and then maybe I have earned the label,
Hmm.
right? When somebody says, I don't like it when you lie to me, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying that I don't like it when you lie to me. Now, in some ways, somebody might be listening or seeing and saying, sassy and rude, well, aren't those labels? Yes, they are labels, but they're done in fun. And if you actually dive in and read the book, you'll understand that my compassion runs extraordinarily deep for both mothers and daughters, and tools on how to get through those difficult challenges in relationships. But again, sometimes we put labels on because we're at our wits' end. We're tearing our hair out. We don't understand what this person is doing and why they're doing it, and we don't like it. We get frustrated. So we try to look at that name calling as, how do you soothe the person who's doing that? How do you sue them to say, okay, I get it. I have done that a few times now. You're worried. You don't trust me that I am going to do what I say that I'm going to do. Now, in a loving relationship, you say, don't call me a liar because I don't feel in my heart that I'm a liar, but I do understand that I need to change my behavior, make amends so that you don't perceive me that way anymore.
We're talking with the love warrior relationship expert, Dr. Debra Mandel, here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and I want to bring up something in light of what we've just been talking about. Let's just say there's this scale from 0 to 10. And since it's just you and me talking here, we'll have to use me as the example of whether or not I am well adjusted or not so well adjusted. 0 being not so well, and 10 being well adjusted. There was a situation that came up not long ago. And talk about name calling. And I, uh, I remember I read it in the email, and I was accused. This was the line that was used in the email. I won't tell you from whom, but it was just another anti-Semite. Now, when I shared this with someone who I trust in terms of giving me good advice, they said, well, the first 3 emails are fine. You just forget about it. This one, you got to take it to the cops. This is not right. I was also, it was also told to me after I shared this, oh my God, you must really be hurt. That must really feel bad. The things they said about you and that stupid hat of yours that looks so creepy. These are some of the phrases that were used. And I said, no, I was not hurt. Now, there was also a phone call involved where the same things were said to me over the phone. I wish I'd recorded it. It would have been great. Great fun to put a laugh track on. And here's the reason why. It didn't hurt me because I don't own it. It's not mine, it's theirs. And I recognize, and this is sort of what you were talking about before, where you don't really have the time to process the psychological aspects of it, but I did. And I'm going, I don't know what's going on in their lives, but there's got to be something going on because I've been working with these people, with these name calling for like 20 years. And now all of the sudden, boom. So something else is going on and it has nothing to do with me. So I don't own it. But that's a hard place to come from when someone attacks you if you don't have the I don't know if you want to say expertise
Mhm.
or knowledge or education, what have you, or wisdom to know the difference between that's mine, I own it, yeah, I'm an anti-Semite, I have a stupid hat, blah, 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 and I'm the worst interviewer on the planet, or no, I'm none of those things because this is coming from someone who's going through something that I really don't need to know about, don't want to know about, but I know it's something that, uh, they're projecting onto me. So on that scale, where would you put me in that regard with that particular incident?
Well, I would say I'm not going to use adjusted or not well adjusted.
Okay.
I'm going to go more with where you were on the boundary spectrum, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes we have very fluid boundaries where we're very absorbent of that which is around us. And sometimes the world requires us to have a much more stricter or firmer boundary.
Hmm.
In that situation, what you did was you utilized a firm boundary You allowed something to be seen, you looked at it, and you rejected it before you internalized it. You
Hmm.
chose not to internalize it, not to make it your own, not to personalize it. So that's such an important part of relationships is how we define our boundaries and if we allow them to be fluid along the continuum. Because if we stay completely open mush piles, which by the way, that's how I was when I was growing up, I was just a complete blubbering mush pile. And anything anybody said, sticks and stones could break my bones, but words could never hurt me. Oh, everything hurt me. Somebody looked at me the wrong way. I was so insecure and so sensitive and so shame-based that I couldn't, I couldn't say no to anybody. Because anybody who asked me anything, I felt like I owed them because I was taking up air on this planet. So therefore, I owed everybody something back. Say no when it's necessary, and at times be able to absorb things when it's true and when it's personal. Sometimes things are true but not personal. Sometimes things are not true and personal, but when they're true and personal, especially if it's coming from a source that we trust, we definitely want to pay attention to it. If a best friend says to you, hey, by the way, but what if a friend had said to you, hey, maybe you ought to take a look at this situation? I've seen a few things that I've questioned or noticed myself. Maybe it's worth taking a look at, right? That'd be
Hmm.
a different scenario than the feedback that you get from the world as to how you operate and who you are. But I'll tell you something, I have worked with a lot of pretty famous people, and a lot of them, unfortunately for them, are very deeply insecure. And part of the need to be in the public eye, whether it's performing or whether it's writing or dancing or singing or whatever it is, that they feel this need because they're looking for validation all the time. And I had this one person basically tell me she can be in a, 20,000 people observing her talent, and she finds the one person who's looking down or looking at their phone or not paying attention. And we can call that narcissism, or we can call that deep insecurity where somebody is just needing to feel loved and liked and admired by everybody. And that's not realistic. So we get stronger and we get better in ourselves and our ability to function in the world when we're able to distinguish what's personal, what's truthful, what's not. Take in that which is so. A lot of times, what I do with clients who have very uh, fluid boundaries and have similar to where I was, I ask them to put things on a tray. Like imagine walking around with a tray in front of you,
Hmm.
or in certain banks where they have the little tray and they have the plexiglass, and they ask you to put it in the tray. You don't just automatically shove it in somebody's mouth. You put it on a tray,
Hmm.
right? You say, "Hey, you're being served something at a cocktail party. It's on the tray. Would you like this or would you not like this?" Can you imagine a server coming and taking an appetizer and shoving it in your mouth? You have to eat this and you have to like this.
No.
So we think about a lot of things in life. Our partners say something to us that we don't really like. Put it on the tray.
Yeah.
Take a look. Is it personal? Should you own it? Is there some value to it? Or you say, you know what? I don't like what you're telling me. It feels bad, but you know what? Can you say it to me in a different way? That's another option that we have when
Yeah.
we're in relationships. Tell me that in a different way. Maybe I can receive it better. Tell that to me without calling me a name, right?
Yeah.
The tools we can use.
I know she likes this name, the Love Warrior. Dr. Debra
Yeah.
Mandel, she's our guest here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D, and we're having a really neat conversation. I want to dive into the conversation that you were talking about, what you were saying just moments ago. That the dynamic then changes, however, in a relationship if there's, let's just say, substance abuse.
Mm,
And I've put it in this vernacular, if you will. The person who is under the influence of some foreign substance, whatever it is that they've ingested, that's not the person that you chose to get into the relationship with. That's somebody else. So when
mhm,
they say stuff, and then maybe this goes back to the whole boundaries thing. When this person under the influence says things to you derogatorily, the name calling, the whole shooting match, you say, okay, that person I do not like. Now, the person who is not under the influence, that's the person I love. That's the person I'm in a relationship with. And now you certainly can deal with the issues of the abuse, the substance abuse. But from my perspective, I don't know how you feel about this, and I'm wanting to hear from you on this, is keeping the two individuals separate. All right, uninebriated, unaffected by a substance. The person who's inebriated and affected by the substance don't like the abuser, have no problem with the other person who is not under the influence. And I try to ignore. It is hard sometimes because you love the person, or they're in, you work with this person and so forth, or they're just your friend, that kind of thing. What are your thoughts? Is that part of the whole boundaries thing?
Yeah, and that's an absolute challenge. And it's interesting because when it comes to substances and substance use and abuse, then it's harder for people, it seems to me, to separate those that you're actually having a relationship with the substance in that moment, not with the person.
Right.
But it is important to separate them. I'll tell you a funny example. My husband the other day, and this is not about substance abuse, but it's a good picture of the difference between
Mm-hmm.
whether you're dealing with the person or dealing with something else. So he had in our little storage shed, there was some fertilizer that got eaten, the packaging got eaten by
Mm-hmm.
some little critter. And so when he pulled it out, it fell all over his shirt.
Oh.
And he was fixing something in the backyard. We were putting up this new shade, and I walked outside, and oh my God, he just reeked so bad. It was just so awful. He just smelled like he had just been dumped in manure. And I said,
Oh.
honey, I love you, but if you don't change that shirt, I cannot be out here doing this work with you. And he goes, oh, that's okay. I don't really need your help. I said, no, please. So the idea was I couldn't stand the way he smelled from the manure.
Right. Right.
That is not the way that I don't like the way he smells, or I don't
Yeah.
like the person he is, or all the intentions he had in being helpful, but it was that experience. So, in a little ways, I'm making a little light of this, but when you think about it that way, it's easy to distinguish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't going to feel bad, right? Sometimes also, as a partner of somebody with substance abuse, we are scared of making them feel bad about themselves because they're probably already struggling with a deep sense of shame or self-disgust or something in the work that I've done. That's often what we uncover when we remove the substances, or that they're not good enough, or they actually have the reverse where they feel extraordinarily entitled and self-righteous, etc. So it depends on which person you're dealing with. But if you have an active substance user or abuser, and you can't have a rational conversation with an irrational person. And we seem to know that when you have a child who's temper tantruming, are you going to have a real rational conversation with a child who's in the middle of the throes of pounding their head and screaming and saying, I hate you, mommy?
Mm.
No, you got to calm them down. So it's a different version of self-regulation. In that form, the self-regulation is time. You have to have the substance wear off. You have to set some boundaries as to if we're going to have a relationship, these are the parameters. Either you need to get help, or you need to stop on your own, or you need to be able to do this in moderation if that's even a possibility. That often depends on the person and the drug.
Yeah.
So,
It ties into another aspect that I would love for us to talk about as we continue with the love warrior, Dr. Debra Mandel, here on Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D, Dr. Debra Mandel, the love warrior, and one of the books that you've written ties into the other dynamic here in what we were just talking about. You wrote a book called Healing the Sensitive Heart, and it has to do with how to stop getting hurt, building your inner strength, and finding the love you deserve. And we
mm,
all do deserve to be loved. There's no question about it. No matter what we've said or done, that's really kind of what we're looking for. What are some of the first steps that an individual who does have a sensitive heart, who does seem to get, shall we say, bruised very easily, kind of like if you drop a banana a multiple times or an apple, they get bruised pretty quickly.
mm.
How do we is protecting ourselves the process, putting up the shields kind of thing? What do you suggest, especially in the context of healing the sensitive heart?
Yeah, a couple of just premises on that one is, so a sensitive heart is not necessarily the same as being a sensitive person,
Hmm.
those sensitive people often have very sensitive hearts. But a sensitive heart is more of that wounded or bruised heart, as you would call it, right? It's the experience that I still have emotional wounds that I carry forward in my life, and it prohibits me from getting out of the victim survivor mentality. So the book is really about how to move from victim survivor to being a thriver. And thriving is where we have good boundaries, where we have self-confidence, where we have all these concepts that we've been talking about, knowing when we have control, where we have a control, when we don't have any control, etc. So the book's premise is really about, okay, owning what those wounds are and working on healing the shame and the guilt about whatever it is that you experienced, whether you were abused or neglected or raped or all the multiple. I mean, I had so many traumas, we won't go into them today, but that was a lot of woundedness in my background for various reasons. And I kind of walked around as a victim and I needed to change that. I wasn't going to be able to
Hmm.
help other people. So this book was a very huge part of my healing because my mother had passed away very young. I was only about 32, I think, and she was 58. So she was quite young, unexplained causes, and it was devastating. And the last words that she had said to me were that I was the worst daughter on the planet. And the reason she said that was because I was actually trying to get her help. I was very excited about my career and I was learning these new concepts. And it was, Mommy, I love you so much. And all I did as a kid was try to please her, but she was not pleasable. And so that was devastating to me. So I had to find ways throughout my own healing to deliver that to other people so that others who had had similar experiences in various ways would be able to find the strength to carry forward and actually love life again and turn adversity into strength. So there's multiple tips and tools on how to do that. And it's a powerful read. I use a lot of animal situation type things, and how to really find that love in your heart, so that we don't recreate and become magnets for more of the same. Because that's a lot of what people do is
Yeah.
they repeat. And in the old version, it was the repetition compulsion. Okay, this is what was done to me. Now I'm going to try to find somebody who's not going to be the same. And lo and behold, they're almost exactly the same,
Yeah.
treating us the same negative ways. So it's how to avoid that, learn about it, understand it, see it, etc.
I
Thanks for
have,
asking.
oh,
Mhm.
yeah, and I have two examples myself, both in radio and both with a manager back, I think it was in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, and I was in the process of training someone. And we had just rebuilt our studio. And my boss tells me, don't move any furniture unless you check with me. And I thought, oh, all right, fine. I can do that. So the day that he decides he's going to pop out there, surprise, surprise, I am moving the furniture to vacuum the floors. So he comes in and he pulls me into another room so that the guy I was training doesn't hear, but I'm sure he did. And he reams me a new one that shook me to the core. I completely forgot why I had moved the furniture and I couldn't sleep for 3 days. And I
Mhm.
called him out and I said, "Hey, we need to talk." And I shared with him the situation. He couldn't have been more apologetic. Well, bring it forward to 2001, 2002, or even later, and we were installing new equipment at the station that I was working for at the time. The corporation that owned us also bought the station that gentleman that I described earlier ran. So now we're all working in the same building, but I have a different general manager now. And I get called into the conference room because the chief engineer had quit because I had told him, no, we can't do this because the manufacturer has told me, blah, blah, blah. Well, I sat there in what they call open body posture, hands on knees, and I had to work like crazy not to start laughing
Mhm.
because I recognized the situation. And
Mhm.
the old general manager, he was in the room at the same time, and I was looking at him going, "Do you recognize this scenario here?" Now, I didn't do anything wrong in the first scenario, and I didn't do anything wrong in this scenario, but I had to sit there and I listened, but I didn't take any of it in. And eventually we got the equipment set up and the engineer came back. But it's like the repeating of things. The events happen, but if you have learned, hopefully you have grown between then and now, you're going to have a different reaction or in my case action Because, like I
Mhm.
said, I really had to work hard not to laugh because it was so comical. And there was the new GM. He was circling the conference table and me around and around, and I'm going, "Is he circling in for the kill?"
Wow.
Um, and like you said before, though, in relationships, especially intimate relationships, they say, what is it that women they marry their fathers, and men a woman who's like their mother, that kind of thing. Is that something that is, I don't want to say necessarily in concrete, but is that something that people can overcome, especially if they were in a family with mother and father who were not too kind? They didn't treat the children well. Mine did. I mean, I've got nothing, and it's not because I'm repressing anything. Okay, they have been great parents. Talk to us a little bit about that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't really think that's an absolute truth at all that women tend to seek out their fathers and men tend to seek out their mothers. I think it's a combo pack. I think it's the experience of what did we absorb, where if we did have a lot of it can go either way, right? If we have a very positive experience, then we're going to take the most positive qualities of both of our parents, or if we only had one parent, however that worked out in our
Mhm.
lives, and we're going to try to reenact that in our relationships because it worked well, right?
Right.
It's like, well, why would I change that? That's great. I had kind people. I want someone kind. But if we had unkind people or challenged people or people who had mental illness themselves or other various ailments, or they were abused themselves and they never stopped to try to heal that generational wound, then we're loaded with a whole package that doesn't really work well in relationships. So we use some of that because that's what our magnet is our magnet is kind of searching for that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we want something different. So oftentimes what happens is we find somebody who is like the good parts, but is camouflaging the bad parts. And then quickly within the intimacy, the parts start to erupt. And then we go, uh-oh, same scenario. And oftentimes it's the same scenario of both parents or their dynamic. So it's how our caregivers relate, how we internalize our first premise of a relationship that often drives what we end up searching for. So it's very complicated. I wish I could give that a 2-minute package. It's very, very, very complicated. But I can say to your listeners that if you find yourself repeatedly in patterns where the end result is often the same, you're wounded, you're hurt, you feel mistreated, then there's two ways that you need to process. One is, am I just really do I have a faulty picker and I'm picking the wrong people and this would happen to anyone? Or am I actually recreating that by many of the behaviors that I do where I victimize myself, where I'm not taking responsibility for my own part in these things and trying to understand your own patterns? So we want to look both internally as well as externally, not just one or the other.
Yeah.
But without the prism of shame, that is where so many people get stuck, is that they have deep layers of shame. And so they don't know how to process something without plummeting down a rabbit hole and feeling bad about themselves.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to solve that first. We have to go to self-care and nurturance.
And I've tried over the years in my career as well as relationships to be aware of self and my behavior, my personality, and so forth, and what's working in a relationship, and not being the people pleaser, mind you, but trying to understand, like what I shared with earlier, these things, the name calling, and going, okay, is that mine? No, that's not mine. Is that mine? Yeah, I need to take a look at that, and maybe I'll go see my friend who's a therapist and he can help me to get through the weeds and so forth and so forth and be a better person. But not everybody's there. Not everybody is interested in being a better person. They're just sometimes, and you said it so well. I love this about the whole business of surviving
Hmm.
versus thriving. And the last time, and that's the other thing too, is for example, I don't believe in victimhood. And I thought we were through it once we got through the 90s. And then all of a sudden, in the second decade of the 2020s, with victimhood popped up its ugly head again. And here we are once again. It's their fault. It's their fault. I'm going, and I would tell people, I said, no, we are where we are because of what we did, or I am where I am at because of what I did. It's
Mhm.
not anybody else's fault. And even if you're caught up in, like, we have a wildfire that's burning to the north of us here in Santa Barbara, it's a fair distance away, so we're not in any danger.
Oh, good.
But 19 years ago, we chose to move here. Well, we've had like 19 or 20 wildfires in that period of time.
Mhm.
Well, you can move. I'll move to Antarctica. There'll be no wildfires there. So it's about choice, and of course, it's there is no, in my opinion, there are no victims. We have chosen to be where we are. We've also chosen to talk with the Love Warrior. And by the way, you remind me also of a gentleman whose cassette tape series I still have. I was introduced to him by my mother and father, who loved this guy, the Love Doctor, Dr. Leo Buscaglia. He may be,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, I loved the stories he used to tell, which we don't have time for right now. But we do have time to tell you you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan here on Tell Me Your Story with our very special guest, the Love Warrior in relationship expert, Dr. Debra Mandel. And we are just about out of time. I want to thank you so much for giving us so much time, sharing what you have. We'll have you back again. Maybe we can go down that road, especially in talking about not necessarily and specifically your traumas, but about trauma in general, what it is and isn't, and continue this conversation. But thank you so much for being here on the program.
You're welcome. And please, may I give my website, which is
Please do.
www.drdebraonline.com, Drebra online.com. All my social media is there, and you'll send me links so I can connect with you on that too.
You
Yes.
got it. Will be linked, as we'll be putting a link up to the SoundCloud and YouTube channel so that people will see it and click on it while they're listening to or watching, and they'll be able to connect with you and go through your library of books that you have written. I think it's really great. I do have three final questions, and I know we're pressed for time, so three final questions I ask all of my guests. I've asked them of you before, but the questions sometimes they change over the years. So the first question, which has been the same pretty much throughout, is who is Debra Mandel?
Me. I'm me.
Wonderful.
I would say that I am somebody who strives for being caring, compassionate, loving throughout most situations, almost always, and that's pretty much what defines me. Love
Mm,
animals, love the work I do, lots of goodies.
yeah. What
I'm
gets
also
you
stubborn. I'm also stubborn.
up? Well, what gets you up in the morning?
Oh, the excitement of what's to come in the next day, in the next month, the next year, just
Mm,
the love for new adventures and seeing what's ahead of me.
mm. And finally, what was your best day?
My very best day ever? Ah, I have too many. I can't say, I can't answer it.
Okay.
I, I wish I had known that, but I would just be, whew, what is my best day? I think if I were to summarize all of my best days, it's when I have felt that I've been seen and could really see somebody I love in a good moment, that connect, that
Mm,
uber, uber oozing moment where you're looking in someone's eyes and you just say, this is real. I feel seen and you feel seen. And that's really beautiful.
wonderful. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I do want to have you back again so we can continue our conversation. I think it will be helpful for folks. And please get in touch with her and please go to her website, Dr. Dr. Debraonline.com. As I said, will be linked to her website. You can go there and check out the books that she's written that we have mentioned here on the program, and especially the one, Sassy and Rude Her NewAttitude. I like how that rhymes, a little poetic there. And I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love Talal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.